Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season premiere of The Magicians. A great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. It's actually interesting because, there is a little bit of fun to this episode, but a lot of this episode is kind of depressing. I mean, and granted, in the grand scheme of things, I think that's very befitting, literally still dealing with, Quentin's death. They said it's literally only been a month since everything went down in the season 4 finale, so there's many different stories to pick up with. Well, let's start off with Julia's story, because obviously she's trying to discover, it's like, hey, I have this magic now, and I have all this magic now because of Quentin, so it's like, what am I going to do with it? And she can't really 100% decide. Obviously, we hear from a conversation, Fogg did ask her to come to the school, but she turned it down. Because I thought that was interesting, because I thought that's actually why she was getting dressed up. I'm like, oh, you're going, because you now get to officially go to Break Bills. Because obviously she never actually officially went to Break Bills. And it's obviously, in this timeline, it's always been a thing of she's kind of illegally been there. If it wasn't breaking in certain points and stuff like that. So her being there as an official student and stuff like that, I thought that was going to be an interesting element. But it's oh no, it's just her and Penny 23 are going on a date. And it's oh, look at you. This is so cute. They're literally watching meteors because a pal of Penny's is using it kind of as art and stuff like that. But then it's oh yeah, it lets you see that magic can be used like this. And she's like, wait, what? He's like, no, I thought I'd give you some ideas. And she's like, no, I have to be the one to decide how it gets used. You should know that. Because let's not forget, Penny made a decision for her last season that, yeah, things kind of worked out in the end. But still, I think for her, in the grand scheme of things, she wants to be able to do something that honors Quentin. The fact of the matter is, his death led to her getting magic, and it's Quentin sacrificed himself to save the whole world. So the fact of the matter is, she feels I got to do something great, something honorable, something to honor Quentin's memory, with how she uses the magic, So that's why for her this choice is so important. Just like the whole whether she want to be a goddess or a human again, that whole choice. So she wants to make sure this isn't taken from her. She wants to, do right by Quentin. But the fact of the matter is, I believe it was Penny that was nothing could ever amount. Yeah, it was nothing could ever amount to losing Quentin. There's nothing you could do in this world that could ever kind of equate to that. No good deed can ever equate to losing someone, losing her best friend. They've been best friends since they were kids. It's so, and it's so heartbreaking, And then her turning to Alice, because I think for her, it was the whole conversation about seances and stuff, which I thought, was kind of interesting. I was wondering if they were going to go through it or not. But it's Alice, I think because Alice is trying to be rational about it, being because there's a part of her brain that's we should move on. The fact is Quentin's gone and we can't really do anything about it. A seance would be too dangerous. So that's what we're supposed to do, but move on. And I think that's the beauty of it. Obviously Julia and Alice have not always seen eye to eye. There's obviously been some issues, but they came together over the fact is they both lost someone that they really care about. The fact of the matter is the way they're feeling right now is something that only each other can really understand, what Quentin meant to both of them that. And obviously that isn't to take away how Elliot feels right now, which I think even I underestimated how Elliot would feel. But obviously, let's not forget, Elliot and Quentin did spend an entire lifetime together. Granted, they didn't remember it, but obviously it was written down, and obviously, Elliot kind of dealt with that a little bit last season, but he never had a chance to fully deal with it with Quentin, so there's that whole situation to it. But it was interesting in the grand scheme of things because, Julia finding that, what was it, Effingham? Is that his name? The pig there who's oh yeah, an apocalypse is coming. And Julia's oh, I'm hey, I can help out with that situation. And it's oh, he's oh, because she's because she was oh, you're from Filler. And he's oh, you're pretty smart for yours. I forgot what he was basically referencing. You're smart for a woman. And she's you know what? I'm moving right past that. But then it's oh, he's looking for Quentin. But it's oh yeah, Quentin's dead. I even love him making a reference of like, because she was holding or something, he's like, oh, is your corset too tight? You know, it can move the womb around. I do know that for a fact. But then like the moment he hears that Quentin's dead, he's like, oh, panicking. He's like wiping the sweat off his head and stuff. He's like, oh no. He's like, can you pour me, what was it, like a certain amount? And he was like cocaine or something. And it was like, and she's like, it doesn't work like that. And he's just like, is there no medication in this weird world of yours? It's like, oh, now Quentin's not there, but you know, it's like, hey, I'm here. Like, the fact of the matter is I can help you. But he's like, oh, but you're basically, it's like, you're a woman. I need a man. It's like, she's kind of looking like, what? It's like, yeah. It's like, he's not going to give her the quest because she's a woman. And I love him being like, the fact of the matter is, women, people, you know, creatures like, you know, women, when you're in hysteria like this, he was like, you know, massaging of the pelvis, which I'm like, oh, so he's saying because she's hysteric, she needs to go masturbate. I think that's how I don't think there's any other way to interpret that. I was like, wow, that was interesting. And it's like, because I love her being like, I saved the world. I used to be a goddess. And she's like, and he's like, yes, you are very lovely. It's like, you condescending prick. So, and I mean, and to be fair, like, I think it's actually a really good fit for Julia's story, because Julia feels like she kind of has to prove herself, because it's not only just like, I've got this power, I got to do something good with it. It's like, you know, because it's like Quentin sacrificed himself, so she feels like she has to, once again, honor him. So it's like, if I'm not out there doing something great with this magic, then, but that's the thing, like, you're so busy trying to decide what would be the great thing to do, you're kind of standing still, you're not doing what you need to do, you know, kind of thing. Obviously, Effingham doesn't want to give her the quest. She's like, you know what, forget it. I'm going to look into it myself. I'm going to find out what causes this upcoming apocalypse, and I'm going to stop it. So it's kind of interesting, her kind of like jumping ahead, kind of, you know. I like that aspect to it, and I'm curious to see what this means for Julia's growth over the course of the season. Like, her need to kind of prove herself. Like, I doubt like it's going to be that easy, obviously, but what I mean is that things aren't going to go according to plan. To be fair, it's this show. Things rarely go according to plan in this show. So while all that's all happening, we have Fogg showing up, and he's bringing Penny in to teach at the school. I'm like, wow. Never would have thought that. But Penny is, you know, a well-trained traveler, which is interesting when you think about it in the grand scheme of things, especially because basically the advice Penny passes on is the advice he got basically at the beginning of the series of like, oh yeah, block your mind. Because remember, the traveler teacher he could talk to killed himself so that the beast couldn't get inside of his head anymore. Because that whole situation. So it's like, yeah, I mean, he didn't go down that route, but he was basically been like, yeah, put up all these wards and stuff. Being a traveler sucks. It's terrible. You know, kind of scaring all the kids off. I thought that was kind of interesting. I mean, to be fair, you never really saw Penny as the teaching type and stuff like that. Because I forget, like, even though, like, things work differently, Penny 23's story, up to a certain extent, literally went down the exact same way Penny 40's did. Obviously, there were just changes at later points in the story, but generally, like, most of the beginning of the Magician still aligned. So everything that Penny 40 went through, Penny 23 went through as well, like I said, up to a certain extent in season 1. So I just thought that was, you know, a neat element. But like I said, him just scaring his students and stuff like that, just being like, being a traveler sucks, I'm done. Leaves. Fogg comes, and it's like, and then we find out Fogg doesn't drink anymore, and they even love Penny like, wait, you don't drink? It's like, literally, like, I think the only time we've never seen Fogg drunk off his ass was literally earlier in the season. I want to say like before like the encounter with the beast. I'm pretty sure after that is when he started heavily drinking. I mean, to be fair, the way they kind of talk about it, it seems like Fogg has kind of hated himself since the beginning, but he seemed at least somewhat together at the beginning. It's like subsequently since, like, he's been like a mess the entire series. So to see him kind of somewhat functional, and even him being like, oh, at this point I would usually say some kind of like funny or sad antidote, you know, to kind of get you back in. But he's like, no, I'm going to be blunt. You signed a contract. Oh, it's not like it's going to kill you or anything. What we're going to do is we're going to sue the hell out of you. Oh, you can travel around the world, but the fact is you can't escape our lawyers. I was like, wow, not even magic is going to be what you're going to do to ruin Penny's life. You're going to use the legal system to mess him over. I'm like, that's really interesting. It wasn't even a magic, like, contract binding him. It's like, no, it's straight up legal bindings. Like, that was really interesting. So we do see that he is trying to, Penny does try to make the most of it, tell the kids what he tried, it's like, yeah, bad stuff has come from being a traveler because, like, obviously everything with the beast, also all your friends wanting to use you as a means of travel, because it's like, yeah, even despite everything, they've still yet to find a different form of travel beside Penny. They haven't found any other travelers either. I mean, maybe with there being traveler students around, that means, like, hey, maybe there'll be a little more getting around. Maybe not. We'll kind of have to see on that front. But he takes them to Fillory, which I was like, right. I keep forgetting. Literally, Fillory is still not a known thing in the magical world. I just thought about it. I was like, that's so interesting. Side note, I was just thinking about this because I was like, right, the McAllisters have never come back up again. I wonder, is that still a thing? I wonder, is that going to be something that comes up this season? Because it didn't come up at all last season. So, like, Irene's need for revenge, I mean, I guess that's kind of like, they're kind of dealing with their own stuff right now, maybe. I don't know. I'm just surprised that never came back up. Like I said, we'll kind of see. But it just kind of started floating through my mind. But regardless, there is a girl in his class. She comes to him because it's like, oh, she's hearing a voice from another world, but not necessarily a voice, it's a signal. But she opens up her mind, and obviously Penny kind of like takes in the signal, but it kind of drives him mad, and he kind of teleports away a little bit, and he pops back because he was like, I couldn't control myself. It's just like, is it because of the signal? And it's like, what? So I'm assuming whatever it is that Julia, that quest, the apocalypse or whatever, I guess it's connected to what Penny was going through in that moment. It was like, that's really interesting. Nothing's ever happened like the closest thing that's ever happened like that for Penny was the Beast, but even then it was headaches driving him nuts, but not to that extent. So that's really interesting. On the other side of things, we have Margot and Elliot and Fillory still trying to figure everything out, because I really like them being like, yeah, let's not go back to Earth yet, because unless we figure out the time situation, we might find ourselves 300 years in the future back on Earth too, as well, So, but then they meet people, because it's kind of like people are trying to party and stuff like that, and they meet, what's her name, Pri, and she's like, oh, can you guess who I am? I like knives. And I was like, and she's like, I'm Finn Natolis. I'm like, that's her nickname now? I was like, that's so messed up, especially when you remember the reason why she lost her toes in the first place was everything with the Fairy Queen and stuff like that. It's like, that's so mean. And then Elliot's leaning in because they're like, oh, you're supposed to be High King Margot and High King Elliot. And he's like, they're cosplaying it as us. I'm like, that's so messed up. They go to the party because they couldn't really break into the White Spire, but it's like, oh, because it's a party celebration, and because of this whole Dark King thing, there's like a play reenacting everything. It's like, oh, I'm Ember, blah, 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 blah. Oh, look at my stupid brother, Umber. And it's like, you guys didn't know your gods that well. No, I mean, which is like, you don't depict, because even they were kind of like, yeah, they're not, basically, they didn't depict Ember as the complete another asshole he was. So I guess it's like, we'll skip over some of that, huh? I mean, once again, I guess like the main protagonists, our characters are the only ones who really had any that much of an interaction with the gods, but whatever the case may be. And then like messed up depictions of everyone. It's like, oh, Elliot, I'm High King Elliot. I'm drunk all the time. And he's like, yeah, that's original. I'm Margot. I'm mad. And then the Quentin one, it's just like, you're kind of like, oh, that's heartbreaking, which kind of reminds me of something Penny had said. It's like, wait, the universe hasn't prepared, like Quentin died, but the universe didn't have any plans in place. Because because the universe put this quest out there, like, oh, find Quentin Coldwater, but it's like, Quentin's dead, and the universe doesn't know that enough to put some other stuff in motion to kind of compensate for that. And that's kind of incredible. And then like that Alice one was so like, oh, you're messed up for that. It's like, I'm Queen Alice and I died, but it's complicated. I'm like, and people are laughing about it and stuff, and it's like, I mean, that's history. History is written by the winners. So and then like Finn and Josh, I even love like, I got this I like baking and food, and I got a mustache. And Margot's like, oh, Josh must have gone through a mustache phase, which is weird to think. But regardless. But then, like, there's a morbid thing of seeing them execute. I'm like, like, you kind of had a feeling like certain things kind of made it insinuate, because coups never, takeovers or get dethrones never really work out that well. Because let's not forget, when Margot was being dethroned last season, it was either banishment or getting her head chopped off. So there's not many options in that regard. I don't know. I was just kind of hoping maybe things didn't end up the way. It's like, now Finn got hung and Josh got beheaded. I'm like, that's that sucks. Especially because like the little like fake hand they're tossing around and lands in Margot's hands. It's like, that's so messed up. Her boyfriend, that's super morbid and messed up. And obviously Margot's kind of pissed off because it's just like, we need to get back. Obviously Elliot's kind of taking everything in stride because every time Margot kind of brings up Quentin, he kind of keeps it buried because obviously showing his feelings isn't something Elliot is very good at. Because let's not also forget, like, that was also tied to his story too, the whole thing about how, like, he has a tendency to run away, and he's kind of running away from his feelings. He kind of ran away from them then when he embraced them, but now Quentin's gone. Now he's kind of taking steps backwards into kind of who he was before. Obviously kind of medicating himself, getting drunk or whatever to kind of mitigate his, feelings and just everything he's dealing with right now. But, I love it. It's like, she's like, and I love Margot being like, you know what we're going to do? We're going to endgame this. And Elliot being like, when did you have time to see endgame? And she's like, does it matter? All I'm saying is we're going to time travel this, bitch. I'm like, I love that. I love that you made an endgame reference. I like that. But also it's just, I do like that thing of like, when did you have time to see endgame? We were saving the world and we've been here for like, what? When did you, I love that. But nevertheless, they're going to try and find the clocks, so they can turn back time. So they need to find the clock dwarf. And I love Margot being like, wait, you don't... She's like, Elliot, read the damn books. We're in Fillory. You should have educated yourself at this point in time about everything. Because let's not forget, because we learned back in season 1, Margot actually read the book. She was actually fans of the book too. Obviously, like, Quentin was the biggest fan, but I'm sure like Quentin's like nerdiness about it kind of rubbed off on a lot of people. But it's just like, you were High King at one point in time. You need to learn something about this place at some point in time, But they go down that slide where the clock dwarf is, and it's like, oh, I thought you'd be small. And he's like, why? Because dwarf on our world means small. It's like, oh, is your world big? It's like, all right, we're not about to get into this whole thing, but it's like, oh, and I love him being like, oh, did you bring a snack or something? It's like, oh, no. And he's like, oh, I just thought that you'd bring something down, kind of like some bread, some ham, this, and that. And it's like, do you want a ham sandwich? I mean, he's like, if you were offering, and Elliot's like, no. And he's like, oh, no, okay. I'm like, it kind of felt bad for him. And obviously, like, Margot's like, oh, let's go back in time. He's like, well, I can't do that because this doesn't really work that way. But hey, I can fling you 300 years into the future. It's like, why would we want to go 300 years further into the future? Why would you want to go back 300 years? Because our friends are dead and the world is shit. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry. These mushrooms get me high, and sometimes it's hard for me to pick up on emotional... I pick up on emotional stuff. I love that. So it's like now they're kind of in that position of like, well, what do they do? Like, there's no like reversing time. But I did like Margot kind of like snapping Elliot too. And she brought up such a good point because it's like, Elliot, like, I don't get why you're just handling it, why you're so okay with this. It's like, he's like, well, I kind of assumed things didn't end well. I mean, for one, it's been 300 years. Plus, I figured things didn't end too well for him. It's like, despite everything, it's like, let's not finish your wife. So, but for him, he's still dealing with the whole Quentin thing. So he's just, it's all kind of being bottled up. Like I said, I can understand it. Someone who has a tendency to bottle up this, I can kind of get it. Like, he's kind of deflecting. Like I said, he's running away from his problems. But I love Margot being like, I don't care what you're like with everyone else, but with me, I thought, we keep it real because of us and everything. And you're kind of denying these feelings and everything and she brought up a great point of like, for months, you had a monster running around, riding your body, killing people. And right. The fact that matters, we never got the full scope of how much Elliot actually experienced of that. But it's like, right, because he was passed out when everything went down with Quentin. So he literally had no time with Quentin. The only time he talked to Quentin was when, like, he took control of the monster to tell him, hey, I'm still alive. That's the only conversations he's had with Quentin subsequently since. And, I think there might even sadly be a part of Elliot that might blame himself because he's the one that killed the beast and set everything he killed the monster, and he's the one that kind of set everything in motion. He's also the one that got possessed, so it's kind of like, I think Elliot might even blame himself on that level. Like, just that, I think that extra guilt of it, and plus it was running around killing in his body. Granted, it might be a thing of like, he doesn't remember because he didn't really see it all, so but it doesn't matter, still knowing that you were being controlled and killed a whole bunch of people. But I think he does remember. I think he was there for every second of it, so And Margot ends up getting thrown into prison because she's got the banishment tattoos. So there's that. And then obviously the more depressing that she gets caught in there with Josh's ghost loop. I'm like, Jesus. It's like I said, this episode is actually depressing as hell. I mean, it's great, but it's still depressing. And I mean, once it needs to kind of continue to flow where the previous season left off. It's just sad, dude. I can't deny just how sad this episode is in that regard, you know? And so all that's going down. We still don't really know much about the Dark King. There was that whole little quick thing about like a whole bunch of what were they called, takers showed up, ravaged everything, but then the Dark King showed up out of nowhere. Apparently he can live forever because he's been alive for the past 300 years. So that's interesting. It's like, who is this guy? Where did he come from? You know, it's called unshackling because now they're no longer bound to like humans running Fillory, because that was always, you know, Ember's big joke was getting someone not Fillorian to rule over Fillory, you know, so there's that whole situation. Then there's like, you know, I talked about it a little bit, but getting back to Alice, like her being devastated, you know, she, you know, which, you know, her and her mom had that conversation later on. I wonder, did they have any talks in that month period? Because obviously she knows exactly what Alice is going through. Stephanie's not the biggest on kind of really showing her feelings. Like, obviously, like, she was devastated when Daniel died, but it's still that thing of like, there's obviously like, Alice and her mom still definitely have their issues, so talking isn't really their big suit. They, you know, things got better last season, and you see remnants of that continuing this season, but she's ignoring all the jobs from the library, so, but, you know, she decides, like, you know what, I'm going to take up that job. I figured whatever job she was doing, she was going to, like, it had to be about, the seance or something. I guess I was like, she must need to get books from the library. And like, working with the library is the best way to do that. But it's interesting when you look at the library, it's like there's not many people there. Some just kind of straight up just left. Like, even Zelda kind of left too, but not being able to get Alice, I guess she just left. Maybe it has something to do with Harriet, because we never found out what Harriet was up to last season, because Harriet was like, oh, I have some stuff to do, but beyond that, we don't know what. And you know, Zelda wanted to spend time with Harriet, but she didn't want to lead the library, library, because I've been told, because I say library, I'm sorry, I'm sure that pisses someone off, that's a thing, regardless, she didn't feel like she could lead the library, so, I think for her, she felt like she was part of that old regime of like someone else needed to take over, you know, hence why she chose Alice and everything. But Alice is just all using this for a means. I'm wondering who she would, that librarian was talking about. She was like, oh yeah, but he masturbates weird or something like that. I'm like, I love it. We literally got there at the tail end of that. And I'm like, who the hell was she talking about? There's a part of me wondering, it's like, was she referencing Everett in some shape or form? Regardless, I didn't even talk about that, but like the whole thing about like, because Everett literally sucked down an entire sea of magic when he died, all that magic spilled out, so there's a super abundance, and because of that, there's kind of flare-ups of just, I think, like, magic kind of goes a little wild, like, hence what happened with the meteors at the beginning, just because of all that magic kind of building up. And so, because of that, like, Fogg had talked about, the fact is that there are more, like, people who are more in tune with the magic, who might be more magically gifted, are kind of popping up more often because there's so much magic out there that it's kind of boosting what might have been that little spark in all of those people. It's even greater, so now it's literally overrun with people, and apparently some of the magic has led to some people blowing themselves up, which Fogg is like, oh, but it kind of, you know, it kind of works in some way because it helps reduce the amount of people that are here, the grand scheme of things, but it's almost kind of, it's sad, and, you know, I mean, it's interesting to see, despite, even though he's not drinking anymore, that Fogg is still very, very morbid in many different regards. But circling back to Alice, it was all because she was looking, you know, in the index and found whatever seance book she was looking for. And what was interesting is earlier in the episode, Fogg had made reference to that the living clay was gone. I was like, oh, like the golems and everything, which we haven't seen those in a while. Wasn't the last one we saw fake Elliot? I believe so. No, it was fake Margot, right? The Margot golem that Todd had made. I think that's the last one we saw, and I think that was like in season 3, wasn't it? I could be wrong. But regardless, I was like, it was like, oh, all that living clay was gone. I was like, oh, that's going to be a plot point. I don't know what for, but it's like, oh, we find out Alice has all that living clay. Because I did like that moment she had with her mom, because it's like now she's smoking, like, because Alice is smoking now, and it's like, because her mom was like, I know what you've been through. Like, the fact of the matter is, she's like, I couldn't really process everything, because it's like, I didn't know how to be on my own, how to be alone. And the fact of the matter is, I did some crazy things crazier than me. So it's like, no one can tell you how to grieve. You need to go do something crazy, go do it. Because the only person that can say, like, when you've kind of got to that point where you're okay is you. No two people grieve the same way. Like, and the grieving process varies from person to person. So that's what her mom was trying to get across. I thought that was, a pretty heartwarming moment between her and her mom, showing her mom's, more understanding and everything. So, but to find out, like, she's the one that has a living clay. So it isn't just about a seance. Like, I wonder how long has she been working on this then? Because that clay was already there. Not unless Alice bought it from someone who stole it from the school. I don't know. Maybe she started on this a long time ago. A little while back over that month period, but then maybe she just kind of gave up because she was like, oh, there's just no point. I don't know. I'm curious. Like I said, it could have just been that she bought the clay off of whoever stole it. But so her plan isn't just to do a seance; it's to bring Quentin back. But it's like, that can't be a good thing. I mean, his soul literally moved on, and I don't know if there's any bringing back someone's soul once that's happened. Because obviously Quentin's situation is very different from Penny's. Penny was kind of stuck in between because he was astral projecting. Quentin died, so. And it's actually really sad when you actually think about it, because it's like, I don't even know if I really thought about it last season, but like, literally it's the opposite of what Quentin went through in season 2 when he lost Alice. Like, obviously it broke him, and he was so desperate, he wanted her back. And so it's literally the mirror image of that, and it's sad to kind of see history almost repeating itself, but in an opposite way. So I'm curious to see where that goes. I don't think it's going to go well. There's also the whole thing with Katie. Obviously hedge witches are kind of going a little stir crazy because of those read marks, and they can't really get those off, because literally the entire library is kind of burning itself to the ground, essentially, because everything just scattered and broken right now. Dude literally got his arm blown off, and I love Katie's like, don't worry, I got a spell. The fact of the matter is, there's going to be a lot of throwing up, and the dude kept being like, wait, how much vomiting? And it's like, his hand gets he's like, oh, so it's like, okay. So now it's that situation of like, so they feel like, Katie, kind of being kind of pseudo hedge witch leader, kind of. She's trying to look out for everyone. It's like, the library's not going to do it. Sorry, that's just the way I talk. It's not going to do it. We're going to have to do something about it. So they're trying to find a spell. I love that they ran into home dude who's the traveler from the library, and he's been like, I kind of have no allegiances. I'm chaotic neutral. I have my job and everything, but it's like, who cares? So, I mean, he was kind of a thorn in their side constantly. Like, every time we'd see him, with the librarian and everything, he's kind of a douche. I mean, he's no longer a librarian, but he's still a douche. I'm wondering where, how about they say Sheila? I mean, I do know the actress who plays Sheila is currently on Stumptown, so I don't know if that probably played in a role, like, why we might not necessarily see her, but, like, because Zelda had asked Sheila to be the one to convince Alice to come there. Obviously, that didn't work, but regardless. But there's that whole, like, building they were looking for, Pete and Katie, but it turns out that entire building was stolen, so it's like, okay. So now it starts making your brain wonder, like, okay, so is all this connected, or are these very different things? Is the Dark King thing different from the Apocalypse thing, which is different from this building being stolen that had a whole bunch of stuff that the librarians had kind of locked away and stuff, so that I'm curious about all that. A lot of interesting setup for this season. I'm really curious to ultimately see where all this ends up taking us going forward. I think it's definitely going to be a very interesting season, especially considering like how divided everyone was and is. It's interesting because you haven't seen everyone together the entire episode, and I think, and maybe that might be the thing too of like, because Quentin's not there. I mean, to be fair, they've been divided before, even when Quentin was around, but it's almost like they're even more divided because of Quentin being gone. I mean, like I said, everyone's trying to move on in their own way, and obviously that's not the easiest thing, like I said, I'm curious to see how this all ends up playing out going forward. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.